little personal perspective on mourning, and I'm not referring to the loss of my hair, although that is a legitimate item to mourn over. I didn't actually lose it. It went underground and came out my ears and my back. Wives, you know what I'm talking about? But my personal journey begins with a love story. And there was this girl born in Hawaii and grew up on the East Coast named Christine, back in the last century, back in the 60s. And there was a boy that was born in England and grew up in Sydney and used to speak Australian, but then he spent 38 years in America. And in their mid-30s, they met at a singles group at church. Now, I'm in the bottom left there, the guy with the hair. Yes, and then you can see her over my left shoulder, just to the right of me, the girl with the hair. And this was 25 years ago, and they really liked each other. We really liked each other, and we hung out. We never officially dated. And then I waited a week too long to ask her out, and this other guy from church moved in, and they started dating. So when I called, it's like, oh, Ed and I started dating, and then Ed became my roommate. And then when they broke up 5 months later, he told me all the things that were wrong with her, because, you know, that's what you do, right? Yeah. And I believed him. And then the church gossip train, oh my gosh, did he just say church gossip train? Sorry. But it happened. But 14 years later, through the magic of Facebook, we reconnected, and we found that we really liked each other. And so this was 10 years ago. And one day we flew to St. Augustine, which is a tourist spot on the coast of Florida where she was living and I was out in California. And got down on one knee and asked her to be my wife, and she said yes. And so we got married. That was 10 years ago, and then the Lord blessed us with a 2-year honeymoon. I worked freelance video production, and we traveled. We did medical mission trips to India, 3 of them. She was never trained as a dental hygienist, but that was her job on the medical mission trips, which was amazing, and she loved it. We went to Africa. And we went to Nepal. So we often said we lived more in 4.9 years together than a lot of people do in 49 years together. We bought a house together that the Lord just blessed us with that kind of fell into our laps. And we had this trip of a lifetime. We went with our church to Israel and walked in the footsteps of Jesus, which was just amazing. Here we are on the Temple Mount. And I started a new job at a big church working in video production. Oh, Ken's heard me. It's too late. Well, you already knew that, so... And then at 46 years old, a little boy made his presence known. And at 47 years old, she brought forth this beautiful little boy who, again, at 47 years old, is quite a miracle baby. And pay attention to that artwork in the background. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But we were just so blessed and so amazed at God's blessing. And, you know, we had lived a full lives by ourselves as single people, and then in our mid-40s we came together and started a whole new life together. And he was so amazingly cute. And you've probably seen him run around. He's my personal tornado. But they had a great time together. She absolutely loved him. She always wanted to be a mom, and she got her wish at 47 years old, which was, again, quite amazing. But then she started to have back pain in her lower back and right hip, and even in this picture, April of 2015, she was having trouble. And so begins a cautionary tale, because I meet a lot of ladies that, oh, mammograms scare me. Well, I didn't realize how much she didn't like doctors, and she didn't believe in mammograms, and life is what happens when you're making plans. And so 3 days after her 48th birthday, she had to go into hospital because the pain was so bad. And 5 days later, the MRI read like a horror story: destructive metastases in the lower back and right hip, lesions in the liver and lungs too numerous to count, and the cancer was everywhere, and she had been ignoring the signs. And we were just, we were living life and enjoying the baby. So we started doing 8 weeks worth of trips up to Georgia, which was an 8 to 9 hour drive every weekend for her to get supportive natural treatments on top of some chemo. But it just got in front of her. It was already too far ahead. And this was November 10th, and 13 days later, she was looking at Jesus. So that's her saying, pretty much goodbye to her little boy. And she often said, we're not promised tomorrow. And we didn't realize that her tomorrow would be so soon. But, those that are around you, don't take them for granted. Cherish them. And I found this neat sculpture in a mortuary in Utah. There's an old lady touching the veil, stepping through the veil of death, and coming out the other side renewed as she steps and touches the hands of Jesus, young. And here's the ultimate life goal, to meet him in heaven and to hear those words, well done, good and faithful servant. So, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And that's just one of the things that's gotten me through this journey. And the joy of the Lord is my strength, as Ken was saying earlier. If I can't cling to my faith in the tough times, then what's the point of having it? Because it's easy to believe in God and all his blessings when things are going well. But when life really hits you full on, it's so good to have him there to cling to. In everything, give thanks. Not just the good times, but the bad times. Praise him for the good times and the bad times. And he sent his peace. Even, the first couple of days you're busy making arrangements and preparing for the memorial service, which is the end of it for most of your friends, but your journey goes on every day after that. But he sends that peace that passes all understanding. And then this is one of my favorite verses that kind of got me through this. In this world you'll have tribulation. This is Jesus telling us. Some versions say trouble. Tribulation is a really good word because that describes when the world is tearing itself apart more than you've ever seen. And that's what was happening in my world at that time. But take heart, because Jesus has overcome this world for all eternity. And that's the blessed hope that we have. And here, this Christine painted this before Elijah was born. Psalm 139, verse 16. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. What a blessed hope that is. My birth certificate has an expiration date, which is okay. I don't know it, and that's okay too. So let's talk about mourning, because we're all going to experience it. If you've made it into your 20s and 30s and 40s without losing somebody close to you, you're very blessed. But eventually, we're going to start losing people that are around us. In the Western world, we don't really know very well how to mourn. In Israel, for example, my son and I just spent 2.5 years in Israel, which was an amazing blessing, doing a master's degree, which I'm not sure why I did that to myself, but we stayed in the land for a long time. And the Jews, when they lose somebody, their family and friends come around and they sit on the living room floor and cry it out for a week and mourn. And they also bury the body within 24 hours. So there's progression in the mourning. And after a month, they finish the mourning and they kind of hand it off to the children. And then in a year, it's all done. In the Western world, back in the 20th century, during the wars, people would wear black to signify mourning, but because of the wars, so many people were wearing black, it became so depressing that they stopped that practice. So nowadays, it's more like, hey, sorry for your loss, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, I'll see you next year on Facebook, click send, because I can't deal with this. Like, well, I'm the one dealing with it, And then the great unknown, that's the world says, what's beyond that veil? But we know, because of the Bible, that when we leave this life, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. Again, what a blessing, what a beautiful hope. Because everything in this world is temporary, We say, okay, so eternity sounds great, but then what? Because our brains can't even fathom what eternity is like. So when you experience loss, just for future reference, put this in a shelf in the back of your head, but just know that your brain is going to be in a fog. You're operating at 50% or less because you just had this massive trauma happen in your life. There's someone that had just been there, be it a spouse especially, but a family member, within your immediate family unit that you live with every day. If they're gone, then it's obviously a profound effect. Parents, we kind of expect them to go when they're older. If they go when they're younger, again, heartbreak. For a spouse, half of you is gone. I did a 13-week grief grief share group, which gave steps along the way each week. And one of the best analogies I heard of loss was, you're weaving a tapestry of your lives together for decades, and then all of a sudden that tapestry is ripped in half and you've just got these frayed tassels waving in the wind. And to put the Bible on top of that, it says, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So to lose a spouse, all of a sudden, that the daily intimacies of just doing life together, grinding the coffee and letting her smell it, I smell the coffee now, and I'm like, it reminds me of those times with her. Because, when you wake up, you should smell the coffee, right? That was a joke. But anyway. But clinging to the Lord, and people will say, just put one foot in front of the other. And it's kind of true. You think of the Israelites in the desert. God would send them enough manna to sustain them for the day. His mercies are new every morning. And so through His grace, we can make it each day if we cling to Him and don't focus on the loss. And so let it out. Grief is a physical emotion. It's stress. When my dad passed, my mom and dad lived here on the Gold Coast, and when my dad passed, I was in America, and I got here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my dad. And then I would feel these waves build up behind me, and it was just the grief. And in Australia, we say everything will be better after a sit down and a cry, right? And it's so true. If you can cry it out, it's the best healing. And if someone tells you to be strong, kick him in the shins and tell him, hey, be strong. Thank you for that laughter. Appreciate that. But that's not the Christian thing to do. I don't suggest you kick them in the shins, but you get the idea. And then take as long as you need. I got a text. I got a lovely, caring text from a friend a year in. Now that your period of mourning has come to an end, I'm like, what are you basing that on? I think she pulled a verse from Zechariah or something. It's like, no, a year is not enough. I'm sorry. This is a good one. My child, I never left you. Those places with the one set of footprints is when I carried you. That long groove over there is when I dragged you for a while. And maybe He drags us if we're not willing, but I feel like He just carried my son and I here. And He dropped us here at Mom and Dad's house on the Gold Coast. And Christine and I were here 10 years ago at this church on our honeymoon. And I felt the Lord saying, you need to go back there. And it's been such a blessing. You guys have been such a blessing to me. It feels like home. And so thank you for your love and friendship. So, how to get through loss? Well, there's counseling, but I went to counseling, and I felt like I was teaching the counselor more than what he was giving me. Pastoral care, someone like Ken or Dan or the other people here will help you. And then friends and family, but also finding others that have been through a similar loss. I hate to say it, but all the counseling training in the world will teach you about things, but you won't understand. Like, I would ache from head to toe some days thinking about her and just missing her. And so a person that's gone through that will get it, and they'll sit with you and they'll listen. So exploring and processing memories is good, but we also need to move forward. I did a lot of memory lane trips with my son, which were incredibly painful. We would retrace routes that she and I had traveled on, and it was good. It was troublesome, but it was also very healing. And we did one in particular over and over, and I could measure my progress through my grief with those memory lane trips. But staying busy, volunteering, helping others is another way to get through the grief, but there's no quick fix. And then seeking the Lord, as Ken said earlier, it's so important. Now, if you're watching from the outside, what to say, or should say what not to say to the bereaved, because there are no words, and that's the best thing I ever heard from somebody. It was a young guy said, Paul, there are no words. I'm like, I know, give me a hug. And usually we say things that aren't helpful, like, well, you'll find somebody else, or God needed another angel in heaven. No, he doesn't, and she wasn't an angel. Angels are different. So, but anyway, and don't use cliches like, you'll find somebody. I just said that. You'll find somebody. Somebody said to me, after Christine had been diagnosed, she's in the bedroom resting, and this lady said to me, "I wonder who we can set you up with." Oh my gosh, did I just say that out loud? So, we usually say things that aren't good. And spending time with a person, not saying anything, because you can't say anything that's going to fix the situation, but just spending time with them, sitting with them, if you put a hand on their shoulder, letting them talk about it, if they want to. At some point, you're going to want to talk about that person because they were part of your daily life, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And it's nice to hear about them from your friends. It's like there's this elephant. Well, you become the elephant in the room when you lose someone, especially a spouse. No longer can you hang out with your couple friends or family friends because now it's like, oh, that's the person that lost their spouse. But we shouldn't be like that. We should be loving and welcoming, and then acts of service, bringing food. And if you're the person suffering the loss, you need to tell people what you need. Oh, I'm fine. It's like, no, I'm starving. The house is a wreck. I have no clean clothes to wear. So, tell people, please do some laundry. The yard, I can't see the front street anymore. The grass is so tall. So acts of service. These are all beautiful ways that we can help others. So, piling up riches in heaven. When life gives you trials, it shows you where your faith is or isn't. It shows you if you're a true believer in the Lord, or if you're just going to walk away and say, forget it. Where were you when I needed you the most? But no, this is when we need Him the most, because these lives are full of trouble. And so, and then ultimately, it teaches you character and long-suffering and how to help others through similar experiences. So, that's a shadow of the girl holding the boy. Just an idea, these lives are a vapor. And ultimately, my cup does run over. Even in the midst of these sorrows and trials, He's blessed me. And that little boy out there keeps me going. There was a mom, she was 25 and pregnant when her deputy sheriff husband went to a call and never came home. And she said if it wasn't for that little baby, she wouldn't have got out of bed for 6 months. And then she also said to me, eventually the tears will turn to smiles. And I do look at pictures from time to time, and I notice there's a giant smile on my face. So that's beautiful, that God heals the brokenhearted. And then ultimately the Great Commission to go into all the nations and make disciples of all men, baptize them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, because people are dying every day without Jesus. So let's be a blessing to those around us, especially those right next to us. So thank you, everyone, for your time, and I hope this helps in the distant future.